common reasons that GPs might leave? And I'm assuming if it's the opposite of those reasons, that's probably why they stay.
For some of them, it might be about promises not being given and then not delivered upon. So promises that have been made through the hiring process and the reality doesn't match with that. It may be around not feeling that the earning potential is there because, again, they may have been given a promise on how busy they're likely to be, what the patient flow is going to look like, and what the opportunities are, and it just doesn't live up to what they were told. So the earning potential is a big one. And again, coming back to that fit, it's whether or not they feel aligned with their clinic, whether they enjoy going to work every day, whether they enjoy the team that they're in, whether they feel like they're provided with the opportunities to pursue special skills, whether they're provided with opportunity to further their CPD points, that there's a real sense of support from the management and the ownership of the clinic. I think if they don't get that, then there's much less loyalty and much less sort of desire to stay put.
Welcome to the Scale My Clinic podcast. This week we have Claire Ponsford, who is founder and director of Wavelength International, medical recruitment company and individual extraordinaire. Claire, welcome to our podcast this week. Let's jump straight into it. Recruitment has been a battle for practices for some time recently. I'd love your take on how bad or not is the GP workforce shortage, and what do you see as the current state of play and what we can expect in the near future?
I think it depends where you are in the country as to how bad it is. I think it's clear that there is still a shortage. It's clear that there are many clinics out there that are unable to grow as fast as they would like to because they can't find the right GPs to join them. It's certainly clear that local GPs have a lot of choice now, and it makes it much harder to recruit. I think some of the recent changes with regards to expedited pathways for UK, Irish GPs, etc., will really free up a pipeline of international GPs, which will help. And then also the recent changes to DPA status, which seems to have expanded DPA status in a number of regions that didn't have it before, will also help. I don't think it's dire, but I think you have to, as a clinic, really prioritise recruitment of GPs and plan well ahead, because it may take quite a lot longer than you think it's going to actually get the right person to join your clinic.
Cool. So it's almost as if you read what's in my head, because you've got loads of my upcoming questions that you've sprinkled in what you were just talking about there. I suppose you said at the very beginning, there are some people that are doing well based on location or other factors, and then there's others that might be struggling. From your experience and your team's experience, obviously you've got a pretty big team and you work with a lot of practices through the country. What do you see that the people who are performing well with recruitment or able to recruit well, what are those practices doing differently compared to maybe those that are struggling?
There's actually quite a lot that they're doing differently. And I think it starts, as I say, with prioritising recruitment and then understanding that they need to show any potential GP that might want to join them what it would be like to work at their clinic. And when I say show, that could be via their website. I see so many GP clinics that don't have any section of their website that's for doctors. And that's a big differentiator, is those clinics that focus on how to recruit will always have in their About Us section, they'll have a Join Us page. They'll have information about what it's like to work in their clinic. They'll possibly have testimonials from doctors that already work there. They'll have a way for any interested GP to connect with somebody and express their interest. So that's one thing that I see a lot of clinics do. And I think they also have this perspective of recruitment needing to be an always on function, as opposed to just when they have a gap or as a sort of reaction to somebody departing. So some of the clinics that I have in mind, they're always on with their recruiting activity. They're always planning from a workforce planning perspective around potential retirements, what attrition might look like in terms of recognizing that you're not necessarily going to keep every doctor for 10, 20 years. There's going to be some natural attrition. And they're constantly working at it. They're promoting what their practice does, how it does it. They're networking. They're really putting effort into the recruitment function.
Interesting. So I think if I heard you right, we're talking about number one, make it an actual priority. Number two, make it easy for people to know you're recruiting and find out what it would be like to work with you. Number three, probably something about don't just recruit when you think you need to recruit, always be recruiting and always be promoting, building a bit of a pipeline. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I think
fair
so.
summary?
And I think that's all about the sourcing and having a pipeline. But then I think there are also clinics that once they get that piece right, it's then focusing on retention and getting the right match, getting somebody that joins them and is likely to stay because they are a good fit for that clinic. So some of the clinics that we work with that have been successful in growing because they've been able to hire the right staff. That's what they focus on is just getting the right cultural fit, getting the right values alignment. And that means that then anyone they hire is likely to stay longer term. So they really do look after them.
Absolutely. So obviously retention in that you can't fill a leaky bucket, so you can recruit as many people as you want. If they keep leaving, it's hard for the practice to grow beyond that. But intentionally bringing retention into the recruitment process, so you're actually bringing in the right people who are more likely to be the right fit for the practice for the long term, rather than just a bum on a seat.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's when times are tough and when it is difficult to find the right people, there is a sense of urgency. And sometimes you may feel like okay is good enough. But I think if there is a misalignment in values and culture, it will come back to bite you. It really will. So I think it would be better to wait for the right fit than hire somebody that's really going to upset everyone else in your clinic and potentially lead to other people departing as well.
Absolutely. And so obviously you've touched on retention there. Why, in your experience, do GPs stay or leave? You probably see more when GPs are leaving because they're not happy or not satisfied where they are. What are common reasons that GPs might leave? And I'm assuming if it's the opposite of those reasons, that's probably why they stay.
For some of them, it might be about promises not being given and then not delivered upon. So promises that have been made through the hiring process and the reality doesn't match with that. It may be around not feeling that the earning potential is there because, again, they may have been given a promise on how busy they're likely to be, what the patient flow is going to look like, what the opportunities are, and it just doesn't live up to what they were told. So the earning potential is a big one. And again, coming back to that fit, it's whether or not they feel aligned with their clinic, whether they enjoy going to work every day, whether they enjoy the team that they're in, whether they feel like they're provided with the opportunities to pursue special skills, whether they're provided with opportunity to further their CPD points, that there's a real sense of support from the management and the ownership of the clinic. I think if they don't get that, then there's much less loyalty and much less sort of desire to stay put.
Absolutely. And so it's an interesting point because in the last couple of years, there's been a big concern about payroll tax and the talk about the independence of the doctor, the talk about tenant doctors. And so then there's almost in some settings been like a separation between practice and GP, almost to the point where I've heard some people talk about we can't engage with them, we need to keep it very separate. Are you saying on a practical level that is actually quite difficult for doctors because they might want to feel part of something a bit bigger, in your experience?
Absolutely. Yes. I think everyone when they go to work wants to feel part of something. They want to feel like they're contributing and that they have a good supportive team around them. So I think doctors rely heavily on other staff around them in the clinic as well, whether it be your admin reception staff, whether it be the nursing staff, the allied health team. They never are working in isolation, and I totally understand that the spectre of payroll tax has scared a lot of practice owners, but I don't think that model works particularly well for either the clinic or the GP or the patient, to be honest. I don't think you can then have a sort of a consistent experience as a patient going to a clinic that isn't providing some kind of consistent view of what it is to be part of that clinic and what you're offering to your patient base.
I think you want to probably create an environment where people want to collaborate and want to be part of it. And so maybe as an owner, it's about creating that environment. And if you create the environment, you're not forcing anyone to do anything. They just naturally lean into it because they want to be part of it, because they see the benefit and feel the benefit for themselves as a GP, but also probably for their patients and for the non-clinical part of your brain, which needs some stimulation as well.
Exactly.
Interesting. And so that's why people stay or leave. What about when they do leave? What, in your experience, or maybe they're new to the job market, what are GPs really looking for when they approach a practice or when they approach you to help you, for you to help them find their practice?
A lot of it comes down to location is often number one, which is unfortunate for those clinics that are in locations which struggle to attract doctors, but location is often a number one. However, you can overcome that location bias with other things. Percentage of billings / earning potential is important, and we try very hard to educate doctors on the difference. That a clinic may well be offering you 75% of billings, but 75% of what? And they could be going to a clinic that's offering a lesser percentage, but actually the earning potential is greater. For a clinic to be able to prove earning potential, I think is really important. Doctors want to see evidence. They want to see the stats of okay, if it's a vacant position that they're filling, how did the prior doctor perform? Or if it's a new position, what currently are other doctors doing in terms of patients seen, earning potential, etc. They really want the proof of that. So I think clinics who have the data to hand are at an advantage against those clinics that don't. They are often looking for contracts that are not punitive in any way. And by saying that, when I say that, I mean a lot of clinics are understandably risk averse and trying to protect themselves whenever they put a contract in front of a potential doctor. And I think there is a tendency to perhaps try and lock them in contractually in some way, shape, or form. That's never viewed particularly favourably by doctors. And what we always try to say to clinics is that the way that you keep GPs with you is through your retention strategy and having the right fit in the first place, rather than trying to put some kind of legal obligation that they have to stay with you 5 years, or they're having to pay back something. Or, you know, if you're sponsoring them on a visa, for instance, I've seen some contracts where clinics are stating that visa fees and sponsorship fees, etc., need to be reimbursed if they leave earlier than the contracted term, 3 to 5 years. So that's never looked upon particularly favourably. And I think clinics need to sort of balance their desire to try and protect themselves from risk with the need to be able to be competitive in terms of how you're structuring your contract, in the marketplace. The clinic itself and consulting rooms, the way it feels to work in, the environment is often on top of the list as well. Feeling like it's a pleasant environment to work in, and also just that support piece, support from the clinic owner, support from the front office staff, so that they can run their practice and the administration part is smooth for them, and essentially all their focus then is on the best care for patients.
Really interesting what you said right at the beginning, which was about a percentage versus your actual earnings. That's a common conversation that we have with other owners. I'd love to know, as best as you can describe. I mean, I think sometimes there's this thought that, and I've certainly observed it with perhaps other recruiters in the space, where it's about, let me just get the person signed up to a job. I can take my fee. That's it. I'm sensing you've got a bit of a process around matching or something, just from what you were just describing. I'd love to just get inside the mind of a recruiter and just understand, how do you, like, what's in your mind when you're placing a potential candidate and introducing them to a practice or a set of practices? What are you trying to do from a GP point of view or from a practice point of view when you're thinking about matching them? Or is it just sign with the first one and be done?
No, absolutely not. It has to be the right match, and the way that you determine that is twofold. We have very in-depth interviews with potential GPs. We're trying to find out not just about the exact type of job that they want, but also how they typically practice as a GP right now, so that we can understand how that might transfer into a new environment. We try to understand in depth their family situation, anything external to work that may impact on their decision, and really what's important to them from both a work and lifestyle perspective. And on the other side of that, in terms of the clinics that we work with, again, we go through a sort of fairly in-depth practice profile where we're really digging into what the practice is like to work in, what it offers, what the structure is, the admin, the clinical support, all those kinds of things that give us a very, very clear picture of the clinic, but also what it is they're looking for in their new GP, what's important to them, what values are important to them, what personality would be the right kind of fit. And then you're really just trying to sort of match the two then, depending on, there are occasions where a GP will want more than one opportunity anyway to look at. They want to be able to compare and contrast. We typically not be wanting to put a GP in front of more than 2 or 3 opportunities. And I think that's about the right number, 2 or 3 opportunities that give them they may not be able to get everything that they're looking for in one particular clinic. There may need to be compromises on a few little things, but at least they can sort of compare and contrast and make a very sort of informed decision.
And so you're just sharing that there's quite a comprehensive matching process that occurs. What sort of, say a GP is, in your experience, placed, what's the typical sort of, I know this is how long is a piece of string, but you've obviously placed a lot of GPs in your time. What's, if I'm an owner, what's the average that I would see a GP stay from your experience of the people you've dealt with? Do you have a number or some sort of data on
Oh, it varies hugely. I think I'd say on average, you can expect that somebody, if the fit is right, you can expect that somebody will want to stay with you for at least 3 years, but potentially that could be longer. And I think we would tend not to look further into the future than 3 years. Things change so much with people's individual circumstances, families, life may often get in the way or send them in a different direction. So I'd say around about 3 years, with the hope that if it is the right fit, then they'll be with that particular clinic a lot longer, particularly if there are then opportunities beyond that for partnership, and if that's the path they want to go down.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's really interesting. Obviously, I've recruited a fair few over the years, and the ones I've recruited from internationally, I think I did the numbers and it was an average of 7. Even at 3, and I did recruit through Wavelength, as well as 1 or 2 others over the years, kept coming back to Wavelength. Even if they stayed for 3, right, which is your average from your experience across hundreds, if not thousands over the years, I think that's a really important calculation in terms of revenue and ROI, because I think what happens sometimes, and I obviously in everyone's ideal world, Claire, people don't want to pay anything and they want to recruit, right? Like it's like Real Madrid wanting to sign all the Kylian Mbappes of the world on a free transfer, but the reality is it doesn't work like that. And I think of ROI, the typical recruitment process, like if you included not just an agency fee, but all the ancillary things and visa sponsorships, etc. What would that number roughly look like if you added all that up and bundled it up? Or is there a range for that number?
There could be a range, and sometimes if somebody's not working full time, then your recruitment fee might be slightly less, but the visas would be pretty standard. So I think you'd probably want to allow for minimum 30,000, say, that would include agency fees, visa, and then potentially adding a little bit more if there is a requirement to provide any kind of support with relocation or something like that. So I'd say maybe 30 to 40,000.
Okay, cool. So let's work on 40 because worst case and all of that. So 40, and someone came and they were billing 300,000 a year at a 35% service fee, and they stayed for 3 years. My rough maths in my head is saying 315 in service fees over 3 years. And if you invested 40,000 to get a nearly 8-fold return, that's all right.
That's not bad. Yeah.
So I think the reason we made those numbers up, obviously, the reason I wanted to just emphasize that is because I think it can be easy for practice owners to get caught up in, oh, that feels like a lot of money, and then I want to tie them down and put them in concrete boots and handcuff them to the desk. But the reality is that's not going to keep them there. It's the environment and the way that the very first experience, right, from when they you've seen this, so tell us, what makes the biggest difference when you see, so a GP says yes to a practice, that's when retention starts, right? Just from the moment they say yes.
Absolutely.
So maybe just talk to us about the things you see where things go well from there, or maybe things get a bit jittery from there.
The point that they say yes, there is potentially still quite a long journey before they end up on shore and actually in your clinic. That could be, say, 6 months. So I think if a clinic's working through a recruiter, then the recruiter and the team that are dealing with immigration, visas, etc., will be in very close contact with that doctor. But I still think it's important as a clinic owner to be reaching out during that period and checking in that with that doctor that everything's going okay, and then they feel happy and comfortable, and is there anything else that you can be doing to help them with the transition. And I think that first couple of weeks, once they've landed, again, really, really important in terms of the impression that you're making on somebody that's just the country. So trying to think about all those things that you can do to support them, whether it be helping partner and family integrate into the community, providing advice on schools, potentially even finding somewhere that you can put them up for a couple of weeks so they actually don't have to worry about every day, going out and finding a rental accommodation. And the induction, and I think a lot of clinics maybe don't do this induction orientation very well, but understanding that a new doctor potentially has to get used to not only your workflows, the way that things work in your clinic, but also your patient management system. If they're from overseas, they also need to get used to their billing system, how that all works. So the more support that you can give them on that within the first 2 weeks to really bed them down and get them up and running as quickly and smoothly as possible, I think will really reap the rewards, further down the track, and will make that doctor feel very supported.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, there's funnily, once they say yes, the work side almost takes a side seat. It's about all the rest of the stuff. Where do I live? Where's fun to go out? Where could my kids go to school?
Yeah. Even things like, social events, the first couple of weeks, having a team barbecue or something like that just allows them to make those social connections, I think is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. And can my partner get a job somewhere? Like, there's a whole host of things that are completely unrelated to work that we need to just consider, like, a really holistic view. I know my experience has been just that the more people feel really cared for and safe with that transition, like, you don't have to worry. If you need something, let me know. I may not have the answer, but I'm the best person to ask because I'm connected. Like, that's that approach, and we've got you. Like, don't worry. You're going to find things hard when you start. It's all new. Here's some training, and then let's sit down regularly so you're...
Absolutely. Those regular interactions, I think, are really important. But as you say, as a clinic owner, to be able to say to somebody, come to me if you have any issues, and to then be able to show them that you care and you're sorting those issues out where you can, is really important from a settling in perspective, but then also a retention perspective. I think people People also really remember those acts that happen within those first few months when they're quite naturally feeling anxious. It's a new clinic, it's a new location, potentially for some of them, it's a new country. And anything that you can do to reduce that anxiety and make them feel supported and cared for will very much be remembered and will lead directly into your ability to retain them longer term.
Awesome. And so on that topic, you talked about the new expedited pathway and international pathways, and you said you should expect maybe 6 months, for up to 6 months from when someone says yes to is actually in the building. The expedited pathway, I think it's been just around 6 months now that it's been running, end of October, so 5.5 at the time we're recording this. Obviously, there was a lot of confusion when it started about how it's going to actually play out, and maybe there's still some of that confusion, maybe more confusion in some instances, but I'd love to just hear your experiences at Wavelength International about what you're seeing play out and what the timelines you're seeing are.
It's actually been much smoother than we expected. We've had, I think it's about 6 doctors now that have completed the process fully, and we've got quite a few more that are in the midst of it. And we've also had people that have not only completed it but landed in the country as well. And on the whole, it's been a positive experience. There weren't any sort of hidden obstacles that weren't expected. The process is a lot easier, feels a lot less bureaucratic, much simpler to understand from the doctor perspective as well. And it's been relatively smooth.
And so typically, what timeline is would you say one should expect if they go through that pathway?
Well, I think the quickest, the absolute quickest, and that would be, and remembering that it's not just about the processes, it's about both the GP themselves and the clinic owner being able to provide the information that's required as soon as possible. So that's a big part of it as well, is having all that documentation and that GP and doctor being really motivated to get through the process quickly as well. If that's in place and there's really strong motivation from the GP and they've got all of the paperwork they need, then probably the absolute quickest would still be about 4 to 5 months. And some of the delays come with the visa processing as well, because you, from an immigration perspective, they want to see the APRA outcome before they'll start processing the visa side of things. Recently, with delays actually in the immigration department as opposed to in APRA. But still, I'd say anywhere between 5 months to 6, 7 months.
Cool. Really interesting. I was just, while you were answering that, I was just looking at the calendar back in 2008 when I came. Obviously, the process that for international went through, it was quite simple.
When
And
you
then
yeah, back in 2008 it was,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And then it became like a bit complicated. And then it became like applying for a job at ASIO. And
Yes.
and now it's gone backwards a little, and it's gone a bit closer to how it used to be. I looked because I still remember the day my wife came home and said yes, let's do it, which was Thursday the 17th of January 2008. I remember landing in Australia on Sunday the 6th of April 2008 and starting work on Tuesday the 22nd of April 2008. And I remember that. I have numbers in my head, as you probably know me well enough to know that. Wouldn't it be nice if we could get back to something like that?
I think we will. I think once the immigration department has ironed out some of their issues, the slowness issues there, I think we will. But again, I imagine you would have been very motivated. You would have had everything ready to go, and that's key as well. Is just being prepared and being prepared for the time that it's going to take as well. Fill out all the information that's required to find the documents that are needed. But yeah, I do think we will get there.
And so then on that topic, obviously doctor needs to be prepared, practice needs to be prepared. What could a practice that has never done this before but is embarking on this journey, what could they do today so that they are fully ready to be as fast as they can from their end, notwithstanding the doctor obviously is moving at their own pace, but as a practice, maybe about to sponsor someone, etc., but I may not have anything set up. So what should I have in place now so that I can move quickly if and when opportunity arises?
Well, I think the big thing is about establishing yourself as a employer who is able to sponsor overseas doctors, because that in itself is a process. And once you've established that, then you can per doctor do a sort of nomination in order to get the visa. So I think it would be about exploring what your requirements are as an employer and how you go about obtaining the ability to sponsor overseas workers, and understanding also what your sponsorship obligations are. Now, a lot of that information is available on the Immigration Department website, but you could also reach out to a registered migration agent, and Wavelength has a couple of registered migration agents that are very happy to give a 30-minute free consult just to set people in the right direction, but will also hold a clinic's hand through the whole process as well if that's what they require. So I think that would be the big thing. If you had to look overseas, or perhaps you've suddenly become in a DPA region and you're thinking, I want to look into this for the first time, that would probably be the first step, because again, that takes time in itself to establish yourself as a sponsor, and start thinking about what an induction program might look like for somebody that is not used to the Australian healthcare system and is not used to practicing as a GP in Australia. So start thinking very carefully about support that you might need to provide to somebody.
And so you mentioned there that if someone wants to just get themselves ready and they want a bit of advice, your team are happy to have an initial conversation for no consideration, which is very kind. What we might do is grab from you the details, and we'll put it in the podcast notes so that any of our viewers or listeners can grab that. That's a really clear picture of how things are now and that they are improving. So that's awesome. And I love your confidence that once the immigration sort of side kicks in, then we're going to get hopefully much closer to those sort of quicker timeframes, if everyone's ready for those in terms of practice side and GP side. Maybe just if we put on our, we got my crystal ball is in storage, but if I got it out and just dusted it off and gave it to you and you were able to gaze into it from a recruitment perspective, what do you see as the next sort of 3 to 5 years? What do owners need to be thinking about to be able to recruit well over the near and medium term?
I think, as we were talking right at the start of the podcast, understanding the need for an always-on recruitment campaign. I think if every clinic or clinic group is able to showcase who they are and what they're about, and be visible to any GP that might be considering moving clinic, then that's the best start for any of them, because so many clinics aren't visible and are really just relying on their own relatively small networks. So I think that would probably be the first point I'd say, is that really take a long, hard look at how you become more visible and how you sell the benefits of your clinic, not to patients, which a lot of clinics are used to doing, and it needs to continue, obviously, but how you sell the benefits of your clinic to potential GPs that might want to join you. I think that would be the number one for me.
Cool. So what I'm hearing is always be recruiting, which is something I'm repeating ad infinitum when I'm talking to our Project X members. 2 is don't be shy. Like, you got to get out there and you got to be loud and proud about the fact that you're trying to add to your team, and don't be scared about repeating it everywhere, so people actually know and can understand that you're actually looking for candidates.
Yeah.
Is that fair?
And I think don't be afraid to, not every clinic is the same, and some clinics might have beautiful facilities, but just because you don't have your own unique selling points, it could be just about the strong connectivity in your team, or the care and support, or whatever it is. For every clinic, there will be a unique selling point that is about who you are as a clinic and what it's like to work for you. So, think carefully about what that is for you. It's not a cookie cutter approach. You can't look at other clinics around you, look at the words they're using, look at how they describe theirs, and just lift it and apply it to you. It's got to be real. It's got to be meaningful, because at the end of the day, whoever's coming to look at your clinic, if it doesn't match with what they thought it was going to be, then you've lost them already. So just, I think, be authentic with whatever it is you're saying and what you're trying to promote.
I think that's a great way to bring this to a close. be you, be unashamedly you, and tell everyone about you so they know you're trying to recruit. Claire Ponsford from Wavelength International, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sachin.
Those details you mentioned about your team who'll be there to offer conversation to provide some support and insight, we'll put in the show notes so that our viewers and listeners can grab those. Thanks again, Claire. It's been an
Great.
absolute pleasure.
Okay. Thanks,
Bye for now.
Sachin. Bye. Bye.